here to introduce a new hip exercise that I'm calling Joe's Pigeon. And it is an exercise that works on a really important part of our running stride that is key for not only top speed, but our most efficient and endurance-based running. And so if we review what efficient running is, it is this hip hinge forward posture and a propulsive strategy using our hips that's largely vertical, an upward lift, a rearward push. However, to really maximize how we use our hips, we want to get the most out of our hip extension. And that comes from this last kind of bit of extension, this last third that goes from maybe 60 degrees to 0 degrees. And that's really our goal, is getting the femur bone equal to the trunk. That's important because there's something called the force vector theory that says if we can strengthen into the vector of our movement, of our direction of our sport, that's going to be the most effective strategy to strengthen, to improve performance. And so for running, as opposed to maybe some other exercises, if we can strengthen that terminal hip extension, we're going to get the most bang for our buck. Whereas maybe squatting in a deep squat, that may be good general strength, but that's going to be better for a vertical sport such as basketball or volleyball. But for us wanting to cover a lot of ground relatively quickly, we want to instead focus on the hip's ability to go through terminal hip extension. And so while that's really important, it's actually really hard to do. And what makes that so hard is to do that well, we need the counterbalancing of a strong mobile hip with a strong stable core. In other words, can we hip extend without also extending through the lumbar? And believe it or not, that's probably one of the most common inefficiencies and issues with running that causes pain. And so how then do we get hip extension without lumbar extension? And I really started to think about that. There's a variety of exercises that do work on this movement, but they tend to thrust us into extension. And so before we get into those exercises, why is lumbar extension not good? The biggest thing is that it can be painful. To lumbar extend while we run can cause compression here and low back pain. Secondarily, if we're chronically compressing here, we can actually get nerve pain, referred pain into our legs, and nerve tension and all the related issues that nerve pain can cause for our legs and our running. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, is that if we are overextending through our lumbar spine, what will happen is we may start a run in this hip hinge balanced forward posture, but if I'm using my lumbar spine to try to get extension behind me, what will happen over time is a postural imbalance where I overuse my lumbar, I come out of my hip hinge, and now I'm running like this. So not only will that create more lumbar issues, it's actually going to make it even harder for me to get hip extension, because then my trunk is here, but I'm also more likely to then overstride because my body weight is behind. So what we want to do then, and what my challenge was clinically, was how can we just work on finding and strengthening into that range without really having to worry about lumbar stability. Yeah, it'd be great to do like these exercises that work on core stability, but what if we just wanted to focus on the hip strengthening component? And that's where I came up with Joe's Pigeon, and in part 2 video, we will go over not only some of the exercises that are less ideal, but this new novel exercise to work on this terminal hip extension with a neutral low back.